Yeah, hi, my name's Dan Scarborough. I'm with Data Center Hawk in Europe, and I have the pleasure today of speaking with Phillip Marangella, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for EdgeConneX, and we're talking about data centers in Europe.
Focus on cloud and colocation, data center industry trends, and dynamic market.
Hi, Phillip. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Hey, Dan. Pleasure to chat with you virtually over the pond.
I know it seems a long way away. It never used to seem that far.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that most people on the call will, or listening to the recording, will have heard of EdgeConneX and hopefully have heard of yourself. But for those who haven't, could you just give some background on you and EdgeConneX for me?
Yeah, sure. So again, like you said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at EdgeConneX. I've been in the data center business for many years beyond that, and working with Equinix and other providers and the telco space prior to that. And EdgeConneX's been around 10 years, just about. A global operator. We have over 40 data centers and over about 35 markets around the world. North America significantly, South America most recently, and then we've been in Europe for a number of years now and about 5 markets over there.
Fantastic. Now, I know there was some exciting news earlier this year around an acquisition.
Yep.
And just wanted to know kind of how that's changed your strategy as a business and what you're up to for the short, mid, and long term for specifically the EMEA region.
Yep. So we were acquired by EQT, a infrastructure fund based out of Sweden. What's great about them is obviously being based in Europe, and that's going to be the focus of our discussion today. But it's not an acquisition by a competitor or something like that. So essentially, our strategy remains the same, right? The name stays the same, the leadership stays the same. What it does for us, though, is allow us to accelerate our strategy and to more rapidly scale out our business, right? In the markets we're already in today, we can continue to build out. And the markets or the regions, such as Asia Pac, will allow us to accelerate and extend into those new markets and regions going forward.
Yeah, it's you definitely need to get the right money behind you in today's market. There's a lot of it flowing around, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's those secular drivers for the business, right? Where the entire sector is absolutely booming, right? We're very grateful to be, and I'm grateful to be in the data center space, given that all that's going on around us in today's world with COVID and the like. And I think the data center sector is one of these shining spots it's doing extremely well. So we as an industry are all building at maximum capacity. And it's those things like cloud and the networks and the content and machine learning, AI and autonomous vehicles. These are all driving the need for more and more data centers, more and more capacity spread around the world. I mean, look, we're doing this meeting virtually. We're working from home. Where our kids are studying from home. We're streaming more, gaming more, all these things. Our homes are becoming the new edge, right? And so that's a huge driver to have a much more distributed architecture and pushing data centers out closer to where the end users are, to help alleviate the bottlenecks that are occurring and support the huge growth that's coming, not only because of COVID, but it was already happening anyway. And so that's what's really driving our business, most recently and for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think so. I've followed EdgeConneX from the earlier days, and I know that kind of you started out, from what I can understand, with more of an edge strategy, and then kind of you've developed in some of the more kind of large amounts of capacity in the tier 1 markets.
Sure.
And you've also got presence in the kind of tier 2 markets. How are you seeing the capacity requirements across those 3 different kind of edge versus tier 1, tier 2 locations in Europe, and how does that form part of kind of your strategy as a business from a European perspective?
Yeah. Well, look, our original business was it's always been to support our customers' requirements, right? We do not speculatively build in any market, right? And so, look, I live in Ashburn, Virginia. That's where I'm taking the call from today. This is like, the mecca of data centers. We're actually not here, right? There's plenty of providers in Ashburn to support requirements. But at the end of the day, for our customers, right, the large hyperscalers, network operators, content providers, and such, we always work with them to give them exactly what they want, where they want, when they want, right? And so it's this collaboration with these guys. And, for us, the first wave, there was a need and a niche to fulfill the edge in the tier 2, tier 3 markets in North America, right? And so that's what drove. We had data centers roughly 2 to 4 to 8 megawatts, smaller in size, but in markets like Phoenix and Las Vegas and Houston and Boston and so forth, right? And then, as providers got to know us, they're like, hey, can you go big? And it doesn't matter to us. And so that's what led us in Amsterdam and Dublin and Chicago and in other markets to build very large data centers that are really tailored to a particular customer's requirements. And then you start coming back the other way, right? As you talked about, like the far edge or the micro edge, again, the form factor doesn't matter to us. And we're starting to see a lot of proof of concepts centered around things like smart cities or autonomous vehicles, where you need to be ultra low latency, highly proximate, kind of small data centers to build out. And so we can span and deliver the entire spectrum of solutions for those service provider customers, like I said, wherever they may need those requirements.
Yeah, no, that's a very good way of looking at it, and also makes good business sense, right? Doing what the customers are after.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, right? And it's really easier from a customer service, customer experience, giving what they want, right? Not making them come to us, working with them to go exactly where they need and get as close to their customers as possible.
So we've seen a lot more kind of competition coming into Europe from US operators over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And even now, when you look at the capacity that's under planning for a significant number of new operators, both based over here, there's a lot of capital flowing around. So when you look at that, and then you look at some of the other flat markets like Paris, London, and Frankfurt, where you're not currently operating, do you still think that there's a for you to compete in these more established markets if your clients want you to go there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we have conversations all the time. It has to make sense for them, and also has to make sense for us from a financial standpoint on some of these markets, right? London's an expensive market from a real estate perspective. And where do you build, right? Do you go out towards Slough? Do you go into the city? Do you look at other areas? Frankfurt as well. And you have challenges, particularly in Europe, around power. Is even more of a challenge. Not so much maybe day one, but year 2, year 3, can you have scalable power capabilities to meet customers' requirement in a contiguous location and environment? That's a big challenge that we see in Europe. But we see many opportunities remain in those kind of core markets, just like Ashburn, right? Like there's all this talk around the edge and everybody's talking about it. Great for us, yes. That doesn't mean Ashburn goes away. I mean, I drive every day, whether you go into the store, you see tons of cranes and tons of data center walls being built. It will still remain a major market and continue to grow. But at the same time, you're seeing a lot of secondary markets populate, right? So that's why, for example, we went to Warsaw, right? And we've built several data centers there. We went to Munich as an alternative to Frankfurt, right? You're seeing Berlin pop up as a popular alternative to Frankfurt. You mentioned Dublin. That continues to grow and scale rapidly as an alternative to London in many respects. You see markets like Belgium and Italy, and just like every country is going to need, I think GDPR is a huge reason for it, more so than say latency. But you're seeing every country starting to have its own kind of availability zone to some degree or other that requires data centers to be in a Switzerland, in a Brussels, even in a Luxembourg. So even though they're relatively close proximity, short distance, because of the border aspect, you're seeing a replication of capacity throughout Europe in such a manner.
Yeah, I think gone are the days where the whole of Europe is being served by those key five markets. And
Yeah.
especially with the UK leaving Europe now, I know that there is, a lot more interest in some of the kind of the Spains and the Italies and, the southern market, especially with that kind of access to Africa. Are you looking at Africa and APAC? Are they part of your strategy at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Spain. That will be a market we're announcing very soon. Our plans to go into Spain. We are looking at, and again, this is where the value and the benefit of EQT comes in. As we look at Asia, that's a big gap in our regional portfolio. We have worked with customers and have talked to customers about opportunities in Asia. You have to be very smart in Asia. It's not a homogeneous market or a region like North America or Europe is, and so every country is different. And you definitely need a good partner as well to help in Asia to navigate those opportunities. But again, those opportunities are largely coming from the hyperscalers that are based out of the US and Europe looking to go to those markets. And so any way we can help them and collaborate with them to expand globally is certainly been part of our discussion.
Do you find it challenging as a business to enter a new market, or presumably you rely quite heavily on local partnerships to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, every market's different. I mean, look, a good example is South America. We've recently gone to Buenos Aires and Santiago. People said that those are very challenging markets. We were able, in the example of Buenos Aires, able to be ready for service in advance of our ready date, right? And so people were shocked by that. But yeah, you have to leverage partnerships, and both local and trusted ones you had for a number of years to be able to deliver in a lot of these kind of emerging markets on time. So
that's interesting. So I've only got two more questions for you, Philip. So so we're nearly done. So one of those follows up on what we spoke about earlier. So if you take COVID and the very different world that we live in, how's that impacted you guys from kind of, I suppose, a demand perspective, operationally, and a development timeline? Has that created problems for you guys?
No, look, so from a demand perspective, I alluded to before, COVID has certainly kind of accelerated our pipeline, right, of opportunities, right? Customers across the board, across the segments, have all requested growth in where they are and accelerated their desire to expand to new markets. I think for them and then their customers, it's accelerating this kind of digital transformation. And so that's why there's this massive rush to build out capacity to support more cloud, which could support more enterprises, to push more content and build, more network capacity, CDN capacity, and to deliver content and so forth. So that's what, we're all seeing, the uptick in demand that side. To be able to deliver that in time, yeah, that is certainly a challenge, and you have a lot of, you have to be creative, you have to adapt. When you have, if you have one person can affect an entire construction site, so you have to stagger your time, you have to segment the different teams. So if anything happens, it doesn't bring everything to a complete halt, right? So using technology and RFID to track workers and to do contact tracing, you really have to adapt and be flexible in that regard so that you can still continue to meet your timelines and deadlines for the customer and so forth. So it has been a challenge, but I think it's something that we're all learning from each other as data center providers, how to be able to adapt and respond accordingly.
So the last question for you, I suppose, is something that's quite close to my heart. But when you look at things like sustainability, so in Europe, the German Environment Ministry has recently released their latest study on sustainability of data centers. And there's a lot of discussion over here about proposing mandatory carbon footprints for operators and kind of energy passes. Can you give me your thoughts on kind of sustainability and how that factors into you as a business?
Yeah. So good question. It's a big topic, obviously, not just in Europe, but globally around data centers and sustainability. We have initiated a effort to get renewable energy credits, wind-based, so that our entire edge footprint is carbon neutral from that standpoint. Again, having EQT coming in, being a Swedish firm, being European-based, sustainability is a key initiative of part of all their portfolio companies. So working with them to enhance and expand our sustainability program is key. Our customers, who are some of the biggest cloud providers and service providers in the world, have also put forth aggressive goals by, say, 2030 to be either carbon neutral or carbon negative. And so working with our customers to support those goals that they have and kind of sharing ideas and technologies to achieve those goals from a data center perspective has been another effort. And then we also work closely with the Infrastructure Masons, if you're not familiar with them, a nonprofit organization made up of many data center operators, service providers, and the like. That's one of the core missions of their business. And so, and where we're all kind of collaborating to figure out how can we become more efficient and more green as an industry overall. So, and to that end, I do think that, the data center business gets a lot of flack, but we also are very self-regulatory, right? And we're trying to always innovate and proactively come up with ideas and solutions to be more green, more efficient, for the environment. So it's extremely high on our list of our business of how to become greener and more efficient. And I think it's true for all. So I know it's great to hear it's part of, it's close to your heart as it is for many. So we'll continue to improve and evolve our sustainability efforts.
Yeah, have you seen any of that impact your kind of German operations, or presumably you have people that are quite closely involved with the regulatory landscape in Europe? And are you seeing that impact anything from a kind of meeting some of these standards that they're putting forward?
Yeah, there's no necessarily negative impact, and it's not just Germany. You see it in the Netherlands, you see it in Ireland, and you see it across the board in many European countries, right? Our presence in Germany is smaller; it's more edge focused currently, so it doesn't necessarily. To answer your specific question about Germany, it doesn't affect us at present significantly, but we're looking at it more holistically across Europe of having new technologies, leveraging environmental friendly energy resourcing to continue to improve and reduce our carbon footprint in Europe.
Cool. Well, Phillip, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me. I've really enjoyed it, and we're excited to see EdgeConneX continue to grow and develop in the European market and beyond. And it'd be great to catch up with you again in a few months' time and see how things are progressing.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Appreciate the time and look forward to following up.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Thanks.